the Lazy Money Machine, where we show you the easy, no-nonsense way to financial and time freedom.
Okay, welcome to another edition of the Lazy Money Machine podcast. Today I'm doing a little bit of the hosting instead of just answering questions, which is really exciting for me because I get to get my good friend Erik in trouble and asking him some questions that he's not expecting to be asked. So hopefully he will be ready for those and then some more. I know that he's pretty cool and exciting dude, and the stuff that he's doing is gonna inspire you to get started and do things in a different way. And his journey itself is something that fascinated me when I met him. More than that, it's the cool stuff that he's doing now when it comes to travel and family and just the lifestyle that he has. Because for me, it's not so much about the money or the success in the, how can I put it, traditional aspect of success. It's about what you do with your time. And what he does with his time is freaking cool. So let's start asking you questions, my friend.
Let's do it.
What did you used to do before you got started into this fascinating world of investing smartly and the lazy way on property?
Yeah, it's been quite a while. So I live in Indonesia. I live in Jakarta, and I came here as an expat, as a professional for a telecoms company, because in Holland I used to work for a telecoms company, and I lobbied my way into a job here in Indonesia because there was a project here. So I only worked in Holland for 2 years, I think. And then I came to Indonesia. I had never been. So the first day I landed here was the first day on the job. And I worked for a local telecoms company. And I've done a lot of work in different kinds of internet and telecom companies until 2005, when I started a business in mobile SMS services. So we were doing like football scores, horoscopes, giveaways, all sorts of things that had to do with what they back then called premium SMS. So services where you pay more than a normal charge of the SMS, and we made money off that as well because we were sharing the revenue with the mobile operator. And the story is not really a secret because I think I've shared this before. This came to an enormous explosion or boom in about 2010, 2011. And that business was just exploding. It was like going bigger and bigger and bigger. And it became too big. So a lot of the regulators and a lot of the people that were looking at us didn't really like the fact that our business was doing so well. And they forced a change in regulation, and they came after us because they were accusing us of doing wrong things. Which we weren't, but because they couldn't understand why our revenues were growing so fast. So basically that led to us and a lot of our competitors being shut down by the regulator in 2011. And that was a really tough time for me because we had 50 over people employed. We had, from one day to the other, we had no revenues anymore. From one day to the other, we were in court. From one day to the other, we had threats of not being paid our last 4 months of revenue. There were lots and lots and lots and lots of problems. And I came out of that and did a lot of soul searching. And one of the things that I concluded was it was a great business money-wise, but it was a wrong business. Not ethical. It was an ethical business, but it was just a bit of, it's like marketing trickery. You really, the business was driven on advertising and marketing to get people into these services. And then obviously we were making money off that. So the value of the services itself was a bit questionable, I would say, for what people paid for it. So that soul searching led me to the conclusion that I would never want to do something like that ever again in my life. Being in a business whereby I felt that the value I was providing was not in line with the money I was asking, and decided to look for alternatives. And obviously I stayed in the IT business, and I always call it failing forward. So after my big success in the mobile SMS business, I had lots of screw-ups and lots of things that went wrong. And at some point I decided, okay, I need to go and put some of my money into something that is proven to work. So I didn't want to go to Forex or all these kind of things. So I decided I want to go into property. And it came at the same time with me building my own house here. So when this whole business fell apart, I opened my new house. I built my own house in Jakarta, and that what happened at the same time. And I really enjoyed the process. So then I decided, okay, I want to be in property, but I don't want to be in Indonesia, because the stability of the country and of regulations, things can change very easily. So I decided, okay, I'll keep doing some property in Indonesia, but I also want to do it somewhere else. And then I came across a training company that was teaching people how to invest in the UK, especially where you and I met. And I'm quite I like taking up training courses if I want to get into something new. And that was especially true for this property business, especially in the UK, because I knew nothing about it. And once I started to learn, I became more and more interested, because I had never realized that you could actually build cash flowing strategy on property. Because I came from the Netherlands, and even in Indonesia, most of the loans that we can get are annuity loans. So we're paying off the installments. We're paying off the property instead of only paying for the interest. And then we get a bit more into the property investing. But so the conclusion was, okay, this seems to be such a good hedge for being in Indonesia, investing here, doing business here. Let's do property, which is completely, well, we'll talk about that, but completely boring and stable and very straightforward in a completely different country, in a completely different currency. And let me just hedge my risks here with something in a different country. And that's how I got into property in the UK.
Okay, there's quite a few things here that I want to point and actually pick on, because I think there's great topics for conversation. The first one is to do with regulations. As investors and entrepreneurs, change of regulation is kind of the best thing and the worst thing that could happen all at the same time. Yep. Usually, at the time that it happens, a lot of people perceive it as a negative thing. But regulation brings a ridiculous amount of opportunity. And in that industry, obviously, it was one of those ones that you have to evolve. And then it came on to the other point that I want to talk about, which is the ethics and value. Because I'm pretty, and I'm not surprised, but I am very happy to hear that that's the kind of person that you are. Not that I didn't know, because that is a big deal about property. And I'm gonna actually ask you some tough questions when it comes to that. But the first one is regulations. What other experiences have you had on property where maybe you have benefited from change of regulations? This is completely off the cuff. So anything else that, for example, at the moment is happening in the UK, or that it's happened over the last few years, where you have enjoyed a change of regulations, let's say tax reform, let's say change it, boarding houses, anything like that, that potentially has, can trigger your mind that it is a positive thing rather than a negative thing?
Yeah, I mean, there's honestly, I don't have that much experience with it, but one of the things, obviously, for me here in Indonesia, I build houses. So I buy an old rundown place and I build something new. I didn't enjoy change of regulation, but that we'll come to talk about the different property strategy at some point. But getting planning permission is something really interesting here. So getting an empty plot of land that is maybe, it seems very small, but we can still get like permission to split it even further in two, for instance, to build two houses. Now that's more, trying to find out what's possible under the existing regulations. In terms of, enjoying changed regulations, I think, especially recently in the UK, you need to really keep your eyes open because, for instance, there are now government support loans for companies that are affected by COVID. Those are huge opportunities. That's almost free money. You get it for a super low interest rate, and you have to repay it 5 years down the line. That all of a sudden pops up during COVID. And when these things happen, you need to be on the ball and check whether you're eligible for it, because it basically gives you either room to breathe when when things get even tougher, or it gives you an opportunity to invest. And we We don't misuse these rules, but we did apply for it, and we did get it. And we sort of have it separately allocated for some things that we know that we can always repay it. But these opportunities are there, and it's government money that is so cheap, and on the total scale of things, it's not that big of an amount, but it's always big enough to cover times when things get tough, and those things you need to be aware of, and especially in the UK, because the property market is so how do you call it? It's not underdeveloped, but there's a huge shortage. So there's always changes in what you can do in terms of creating housing. And the things that I do is usually HMOs, which is, you take a big building, maybe a commercial building, office building, and you chop it up into studios. And those regulations change very regularly, and it might open up new opportunities to do smaller ones or bigger ones, or take other buildings that were normally not available for what's called planning permission, to change them into an HMO, to pick them up and change them. So we have our eyes open for these things all the time. And as you rightly say, there are these things usually create opportunities. Again, I've experienced the downside of something like this as well, but you're right. I mean, many times there are new things you can do if you know what is going on regulatory wise.
Spot on. I believe that change creates opportunity. Without change, the opportunities are not as obvious, and they're not as profitable. So that is exactly what I wanted to go to. HMO stands for House of Multiple Occupation, just in case that anyone was wondering what it was or didn't know. That they're also called boarding houses, renting by the room. There is lots of different, but all of them slightly different potentially, but about the same concept of renting a room rather than a whole building. Now I'm going to ask you something that you said before, which is that ethically, you thought that what you were doing with your text messaging service was not ethically right. Now, as investors, you know what people think of us. They think that we're greedy pigs that make way too much money for doing very little. How do you sleep with yourself, you dirty little pig?
Okay, so I started the mobile SMS business in 2005, and when you go from being an employee to starting a business, you have to go through a couple of phases whereby you mature and where you start to realize certain things. And when we started this business, I mean, we were operating within the regulations. It was all legally, allowed. And there were many companies like us. We were not the only one doing premium SMS services. So when the money comes in, and when money comes in large amounts, your ethics don't go out the window when you're young, but you get really, you justify to yourself what's going on. So we were running a completely legal company, legal service, and making a lot of money. You don't ask yourself the question when you first build a business that's exploding, is this ethically right? You're very happy about the fact that, after a couple of years of working hard, you build something that's generating good money for you. However, when this whole thing came to a stop, and, this is where my current spiritual beliefs are coming in, is I think it's clearly a sign from the universe to show us. It's a rumble strip, right? It's clearly a sign that it was not okay and there was something wrong with it. And now looking back, I think it was a time where I realized, okay, I think it's good that I went through it. And that's the other thing. I think you need to go through these phases to see it. You can read a book about it saying you need to be ethical in business, but until you have a real life situation in front of you where you either get stopped by the universe, in my case, or you need to make a conscious decision that you're going to do things differently, money coming in is making you ignorant of the fact that there might be some problems in the business. So I learned my lessons from it. So now I don't want to do anything like that anymore. It's the first thing I look at if I have another opportunity. Is it purely for the money, or is there a good side to it as well? And if it's purely for the money, I'm not interested. And that's not because I don't need it, because I definitely still need to generate income and generate money. But is it a good thing to do as well? So now coming back to the property business, because some people even talk about property investors like that, which means, yeah, we're just we're just moving money around, buying buildings and collecting the rent, where we make our money, because the rent coming in is more than our cost for running it. But I look at it really as a beautiful business, I think, because we are providing accommodation for people that cannot afford to buy their own house, and they cannot even afford, in the most cases, to rent a full house. They have a steady job. Usually, the people that we have in our units are workers. They have a proper job, but they don't have enough money to buy or rent a larger house. So the way that we do it is we always build our buildings to the highest standards. We try to make the rooms as big as possible. All our rooms have ensuite bathrooms. We have big communal spaces. We don't build these things to the minimum standards. We build them to proper, comfortable living environments for people to live in. That's one thing. And the other thing is that the development work that I do here in Indonesia, I cannot tell you how much joy I have from handing the keys over to a new owner. That's like the best days in property.
How good, eh? It's fucking fantastic. Yes, yes, it is
amazing. I mean, I've designed a house with my architects. I've built it. My wife and I, we poured our love into building it. And then there's somebody that enjoys it and likes it, and you give them the keys and they live in it, and it's fantastic. So I think morally, ethically, I'm in the right space right now, and I'm making a lot less money than I did in the SMS days, but it's all good, and it's all steady, and it's all growing slowly. That's another thing. Growing slowly, in my point of view, is always good. Growing fast, it could be dangerous. And I'm happy doing what I'm doing now.
Okay, that's an interesting way of thinking. The slow and fast thing. We'll have to touch on that. I just want to recap one of the thoughts which I really like, which is knowing what is right to do is being moral. Knowing what they have the right to do is being legal. Being legal is obvious. No one wants to end up in jail. Being moral, it's not so obvious. And not a lot of investors do it with a moral compass like the one that you've just basically shown. Because that is the difference between a landlord and someone that's providing quality accommodation, whether to rent it to someone that doesn't want to buy their own house for whichever reason. And there is a plethora of reasons why people don't want to own their own home at one stage of their life or another. Or building something beautiful, like you've just explained. And seriously, for me, that is so cool. Whether it's to do a big renovation, building something amazing, even building a really cool investment for an investor to be able to just take over and create that cash flow that you've been talking about. And that's where the whole slow and fast thing, for me, to be honest, I mean, the faster you do it, the better, right? I'm more about speed. So if I can go with speed, I'd rather do it faster. Saying that, I'm very conservative. And I think that's what you refer to, is the conservative thing and the silver bullet. Because as an investor, I'm sure that you get that all the time, because I get it all the time, especially with the educational programs that you create, which is one of the cool things that I want to talk about. I want to know all about your educational programs. People want the silver bullet, don't they? And it's not usually the right way to go, especially for someone novice. You need to kind of pay your dues. You need to learn. You need to grow as an investor, and then you're ready to be able to jump in to something a little bit more risky, but that's going to create that wealth that you're talking about here. So can you tell me a little bit about the training programs that you are creating? What turns you on? What gets you excited? What gets you out of the bed every morning with the zest of life of a 3-year-old kid?
Yeah. This is something I started a while back. The first effort and start to this was actually the start of this podcast about 2 years ago with Graham, where I looked around and I thought, okay, what's a product or a service that I can create that is sort of similar to the SMS model, but has much better value to price comparison. And information products or training products are exactly like that. It's make it once, sell it forever if you do it right. And I like that. In a business, that's what I like. Do the work once and sell it forever. I really like that. So from the business side, that's how I got interested in looking at education products. And the other thing is I enjoy investing money and time in myself for my own personal development, for my personal growth. And I always enjoy, learning from whether it's Tony Robbins or Bouchard or other people. I enjoy doing personal development work. So I really wanted to get into that, but I thought, wow, I'm already, late 40s, and, it doesn't make any sense to go and do this. It's all these young guys doing it. And then I thought, well, but hang on, I think I've got something to offer as well. So I decided to go and see if I could make something happen in training programs, in education programs. So Lazy Money Machine was started 2 years ago. I had a bit of a stop midway when Graham decided to go and do his own things. And then, but this thought never went away. That's obviously we spoke about it last week, but that's the reason why, you and I reconnected, or restarting this. But besides that, I have a personal development program for millennials in Indonesia, in the Indonesian language, which is, baby steps to personal growth, I think, sort of an introduction course to personal growth. And I'm working on a product that is linked to this podcast. Basically, you and I are looking at that. What can we do to get people to make lifestyle choices instead of money-based choices first, right? So how can you design your life first? What do you want? And then let's go and look at how do we need to make the money to make that a possibility. And yes, that could mean, a high-paying job, but then the offset obviously for that is that you need to work a lot of hours. Or it can be other instruments where you don't have to work full-time, but you can still make the money you want. So all these things combined are really, interesting to me. And again, it's like handing over the keys to somebody that buys your house. If you hear the comments and the feedback and the joy and the blessings that people get from doing some of my programs, and it's just, money cannot buy that. And it's such a reward. I now, together with my partner here in Indonesia, also run a course on podcasting, which we decided to build a practical skills kind of course to get people to think about, making some different ways of making money in this COVID crisis that's going on. And the feedback I get from these guys, they're so grateful that they have the opportunity to learn from us. We've done this for a while, so we know what we're doing. And like even in Indonesia, it's such a huge country. People from far away then, message us saying, I'm so grateful I can do this online, basically 4,000 kilometers from Jakarta, because I cannot go to Jakarta to learn from you guys. And these kind of things where people share their wins, share their feedback in even in very small things is so rewarding and so grateful that I think, I'm hooked on doing more and more of this now.
That's really cool. I actually read something pretty cool today. Well, not cool, actually pretty horrible, about millennials. They are literally running back home in hordes in America. This is because of lockdowns. The reality is that what lockdowns have actually created, let's call it what it is, the virus, it doesn't create anything economically speaking, besides potentially a lot of other people die. Obviously, there is different changes, but the lockdowns have created this new paradigm, and they are going home because they have no money. We are essentially destroying one of the coolest generations that I think we have actually had over the last century. Millennials had this beautiful hope about life. They had that beauty about sharing, about growing, about exploring. The more easy life, the more lazy life. I connect a lot with millennials, and to see what's happening to them at the moment breaks my heart completely. And to see people like you who are creating really cool things, really cool materials to help them out so that they can still live in that beauty that generation has. I mean, if anything, if these stupid fucking lockdowns kill that spirit, it will be the worst thing that these lockdowns has actually done, because these guys have something special. And it's people like you that is going to be able to save that spirit, because that spirit will be broken unless they have something to hope for. And that's what life's all about, is having that hope to be able to move forward. So that is bloody fantastic.
Yeah. And you also see it. I mean, I just had a discussion last night with a good friend of mine. They were over for dinner here, and we are even more worried about really young kids, especially here in Indonesia. Most countries now have decided to open the schools, but here in Indonesia, kids are still learning virtually, and that's just a drama, right? I mean, that generation needs to go out, go play, go socialize, and they're a large part of their life now is spent in a situation where they're at home all the time and only learn virtually, which is not a good thing. So I think the impact on let's say the spirit of life for a lot of the young generation is really, really a problem. I agree with you.
Absolutely dreadful. And more than that, I mean, if a kid has to stay home and learn online, the mom or the dad is also going to have to stay home and not be able to earn, which again directly affects the welfare of that kid. And dude, I'm gonna go political, but that's who I am. In the time with the Black Lives Matter movement, which, dude, I'm behind. Everyone should have any kind of global or localized racial discrimination shouldn't be allowed. It shouldn't, and we should all get behind that movement. But it's very interesting that the lockdowns are actually hurting the Black community. The countries that are going to suffer the most, and we're not talking about people making less money, where people dying of hunger, literally starvation, living on essentially less than $2-3 a day. Okay, that's how they're living. And when you are already that close to death, these lockdowns are going to push sub-Saharan countries. They're going to push Southeast Asia, a lot of the countries there that are exporters of materials that now people are not going to be buying because they don't have enough money to do that. It's going to send massive shockwaves throughout the world, where the estimates that I'm reading, it's about 30 million people that will potentially starve over the next 2 to 3 years. That is absolutely freaking crazy. What we're actually doing in this time of Black Lives Matter to darker countries, to countries that are now in a good way, or they were trying to develop and get somewhere, and has been just delivered the biggest smackdown that they ever will be delivered. So it's absolutely horrible.
Yeah, agree. And I think we need to do as much as we can to speak our mind and try to convince people to change this. But it's not an easy task, I think.
No, it's not. And I think that one of the things that you and I need to do is actually start looking at those countries and start getting a few active speakers. So if you are in a country that you think you have the need and you have the skill set to be able to help people to do something, for example, start podcasting, doing something that's different, okay? Please do contact us, because I think that that's one of the things that we as investors need to do, is just try and look at what the problem is. And it's pretty clear to me what the problem is, and just try to find different solutions so that these people don't starve to death, so that we create enough momentum in the community so that they get jobs, so that the money still flows. Because what these lockdowns are done, it's basically just collapsing the economy. You cannot have a capitalist society with lockdowns. It doesn't add up. You have one or the other. And that's one of the things that I want to, again, if you have any kind of contacts or connections, please do contact us, and we'll see what we can do to help out. Now, I know that you've written a few books. And a bit of work. Tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah. So writing books is interesting.
Interesting or a pain in the ass?
No, not really. I mean, it depends on how you look at it, but it's I would say, I mean, both of the books that I've written, one book is published here in Indonesia, and the other one is now being redesigned and going to be published on Amazon. It's the Lazy Money Machine book I wrote with Graham as the base for this podcast and this movement. Both very different experiences, and the way I looked at books, or still look at books, I think, is it's like an entry point for a connection with me. So I have not yet found my calling to write my life's work, which I will at some point, I think, and which I know you're working on, which I really admire. I think you're the way.
Actually, I was like the first two drafts. It was more about me. And I realized I'm not old enough for that shit yet. So the final draft it's almost there now. It's actually nothing to do with me. It's to do with things that I've experienced, obviously, but not about me. But yes, I know exactly what you're saying. It's just so hard because you feel like you need more. So yes.
Yeah, so the two books that I've written are basically an entry point to get to know me, and that's how I've approached them. And I really wrote them in a way that this is where speed came in. How can I get something out fast that is good, but it's also serving the purpose? Because we have to realize that, I don't know what the number is, but the statistic is crazy. Like 80% or 90% of people that buy a book never read it, or never read it until the end. So for me as an online marketer and as a guy that wants to sell courses and wants people to come into my world, I'm using it as a way to attract people to me. So therefore, I'm also writing it in that way. The message needs to be good, and the message needs to be interesting, but it doesn't have to be a literal work of art. So I'm creating these books around the concept so that I know that I can expand on it. So like Lazy Money Machine, there's lots of angles to build courses or other kinds of products around it. For me, it's really an entry level step into my world, and that's how I have written these books. But having said that, I think one of the next books that I'll write will be a bit more not so much more personal, but more that I will do a lot more research into the different books, into the material before I write it. So for instance, I've got one thing on my mind that I want to write now, which is a book about managing millennials. So not the millennials themselves, but basically how you need to manage these guys in a company. The reason again for that is because I think there's a business in training companies about how to do this. Writing that needs to have a solid framework, because it's going to be a sort of a method that I want to develop that I can then teach people how to use it. So there are different ways, but if you're thinking about writing a book, I can highly recommend to lower your expectation and to just create something and get it out there. Because the first one is the most difficult, and then you'll see that there's lots of different ways to skin a cat, basically, to do it. You don't have to do all the work yourself. You don't have to do all the research yourself. There's lots of ways to help you getting this done. And yeah, if saying I'll do it someday, I mean, that's like the worst thing you can say in our world, because do it someday, you'll never do it. So I think getting something out there is better than doing nothing, and then you can later on improve and make something better or something more, personal if you want to.
I actually read something today on Robin Sharma's, I think it was on Instagram account. Good friend of mine, really cool dude. If you haven't actually read his books or seen him speak, he's fantastic, and actually a very genuine guy. So we even went on one of the America's Cups yachts over here in New Zealand. When you come over, we'll have to do that experience and get to do all the crazy shit that they do. But he was saying today that in order to write good books, you have to write badly. And what he meant by that is you have to start somewhere. So you cannot start perfect. You start somewhere, and then you evolve as a writer, you evolve as an investor, you evolve as anything that you do. And he gets it. And he just basically forced himself to write 200 words. And then once that you get that momentum, things start flowing. For me, it's all about flow. And I only write when I'm when I'm on flow. If I feel like I'm struggling and it's not really working, I move away. But obviously for people that are doing it part-time and they don't have the time, they struggle with it. And I have, again, another good friend over here who was telling me that she's actually writing a personal memoir. She's done really cool stuff, actually. Built a really serious business, sold it for about 15 mil just recently. Really, really cool. And she struggles to get that momentum, and it is just about learning to just let go and don't think about the time, don't think about anything else. If you're on the flow, just smash it, just go for it, and feel that the words just coming out and doing beautiful things. And when you're on that moment, it's when things really change. And then you read back and you're like, yeah, I'm proud of this shit. This is absolutely fantastic. And it's so cool. Again, it's like that property thing. When you give it to someone else, when you've created something that good, that it's beautiful, that sounds good, that you know that it's doing the right thing, it's so important. And I've read your book and I like it because it's very factual. It's very you.
Yeah.
And for me, I'm more about beauty as well around the book, making it palatable. Not that yours isn't. Okay, I'm not saying that yours is. It was actually very easy to digest because it's so structured. But in life, I believe that it's all about fun, as you already know. It's all about being able to be entertaining and entertain at the same time. And a book, like any other kind of work, like this podcast, needs to be fun. It needs to be something different. Otherwise, it bores you to freaking death, and you're never going to get anything out of it. So it's the form as well that is so important for a book to do well, because your book could be amazing in terms of content, but if people don't like it and it doesn't get to the audience, it's worthless, isn't it? It's like one of those, that's a tree make a sound when it falls if there's no one around kind of nonsense. So that's the same thing with a book. If you write a great book, but it's never published, no one picks it up, no one ever reads it, you didn't do anything, because the whole objective of a book is to try to inspire people to do other things. So I know that the cool stuff that you're doing, it's only going to get better.
No, and there's one thing that you mentioned that's very interesting, and that is lots of people come to you and come to me and ask, how did you do it, right? Whatever it is, right? How can you invest in property in the UK while you live in Indonesia? I get that question all the time, right? And there's only one simple way, that is make a move, make a start, do something, right? I think you and I are people that we just execute stuff, right? We just try it. We just see if it works. Lots of people stay in their perfectionist, idealistic mindset, and then nothing ever gets done, because then, the perfect book that you want to write is going to be written after you're dead, which is useless, right? So if you have an idea for something, whether it's becoming a painter, whether it's, singing, whether it's writing a book, whether it's starting a course, whether it's quitting your job, whether it's doing whatever you want to do, make a move and start and do it, and just see if it fails. Okay, then that's not for you, right? I've got lots of shit going wrong, and only because I've got lots of shit going wrong, I know that, okay, that's not what I want to do anymore. I want to do things that work. But by making a dent in the universe, you'll find out whether or not you're good at something or not good at something. Just by rationalizing it will never get done.
Yeah. And it's quite cool that you call this lazy thing a movement. It's a movement based on lack of movement, right?
Correct.
Because that's what we're promoting. We're promoting to do less, but it's still a movement. You still need to put it out there. So why do you actually promote this lazy lifestyle, lazy investing more than anything else? What's great about it?
Yeah. Now, this is interesting. Maybe I share a bit of a personal situation that I had this week, because even though I'm promoting being lazy and promoting, finding ways to make money that doesn't require all of your attention, there are times where I work really hard and put my effort into lots of different projects, and I've done that ever since March when the world changed, and I realized that I've been working like 7 days a week for long hours. Why is that? Because I had lots of different projects going on. I'm working on lots of different personal development programs that I'm building alone and together with other people. My UK business needed my attention, and I realized that I was back into what one of my mentors, Peter Sage, always calls "by me" mode. And "by me" is where you're in warrior mode and you're doing stuff. And "through me" is in flow, right? "Through me" is when you're not working, putting all your energy into projects and things still are moving, things still are flowing. If you take it even a step further, right, it's like the law of attraction, right? So if you are in "through me", you're attracting the right things in your life. I was very close to a burnout last week, I think. And it sounds a bit exaggerated, but I've had this once before when I lost my business, where I was really, really completely drained of all my energy and completely down. And I was very close to that last week because I realized that why am I spending all these hours on these different projects again? And I was working really, really hard. Now, why am I saying this? Because this is absolutely not what I want people to do. And yet I'm doing it myself again, and I need to be caught, or I need to be stopped, or I need to be reminded that this is not what I was signing up for. Because what I'm signing up for is a life whereby I can spend my time on the things that matter most to me. And what I was sacrificing in these last couple of months was I did not spend enough time with the family. I got disconnected from my wife. I got disconnected from my kids because I was working way too hard. And even though I enjoy the work, but I was like my calendar, I had dinner between 7 and 8, and then from 8 until 10 p.m. evening, there were calls, there were still things going on. I was still working, and I completely did not, connect anymore with anybody. And people around me, especially my kids and my wife, they hate that, of course, if I'm not there. So what do I want? I want a life whereby there are phases whereby I work very hard to work on stuff that I need to get going, but there are also times whereby the things that I've created are making money for me, so I can spend my time doing other things. And the other things that I enjoy doing is traveling, doing nothing, cooking, having friends over. I know you're big on that as well, but spending time with people I love. Just having idle time chatting over a good steak, or a nice barbecue, or I know you don't eat meat, but we had very nice meat last night.
Yes.
And like yesterday, I just enjoyed preparing a nice meal for everybody, and then we had 12 people on the table yesterday, which is great, right? So, or traveling, being away. So that's what I want to do. And the reason why I'm promoting that is because I think that's what life was meant to be. Life was not meant for us to work really, really hard, 10 hours a week or 10 hours a day, to make ends meet. And there are ways for anybody to escape that. And the way might be different. For some people, might be get into property investing. For some people, it might be, instead of having a full-time job, start becoming a freelancer. Or instead of having a full-time job, change your job into a product, which is one of my friends in Holland is doing, right? He's an IT guy, and works, meaning IT guy as in he does network configurations, and he does all sorts of stuff. And he is turning his time into a product. So now people can buy, okay, you've got your office IT that needs to be managed. I'll do that, and it's a product, and I charge you so much per month, but it's not related to his hours anymore, right? So there's different ways of freeing up your time, and that's what I really want to promote. Don't get paid for your hours, but create something, whether it's a product, whether it's a course, whether it's a book, whether it's speaking, whether it's a property portfolio, that free up the hours from the money you make to do the things that really matter. And doing crazy things in your life, and again, you need to experience that, going and doing something you've always wanted to do. Once you do that once, I don't know, if you want to start to learn how to skydive, once you start to jump for the first time, then you go, shit, this is what life's all about. And I need the time and the money to be able to do it. And that's what I really want to push people and encourage people to do, because there's so much beauty on the other side once you see that a 9 to 5 is not, the ultimate way of living. It breaks my heart when I talk to some of my friends in Holland, whereby, they've got their next 2 months, their weekend scheduled out for them because they need to, because they only have Saturday, Sunday to go and meet up with the people they want to meet up with. And that's just not right, I think. People should not live like that.
No, we're not made for it. That's a reality. As humans, we're just not able to perform that way. Now, one of the things that thanks for sharing the story. It's always good to go personal. I think that's a lot of people can relate to that. And it's just the reason why we're doing it anyways, to be relatable because we're normal people.
Yeah, I'm not.
I think
I
the
make
only
a lot of
thing,
mistakes, so
yeah, I make a shitload of mistakes every day. Not that I ever admit to them, but definitely I do. Now, what you just did, and why you felt like that is because you went through what I call a measuring phase. Um, and a good entrepreneur has to go through measuring phases. You
Mm,
have to measure performance. When you measure your performance, you realize that you weren't performing at the level that you wanted. That's all that it was.
yeah.
And it hurts. Sometimes it hurts because it affects as well the way that you perceive yourself. And one of the key things that I heard you say, I don't want it to be a coaching session by any stretch of the imagination, but it's just the key little things that you can pick here and there, is that you love what you do.
Mm,
And that's something that people tell themselves way too much. And I'm not saying it's a wrong thing to say. I'm saying that if you give yourself that excuse, you're giving yourself an out to keep doing it. What you said after, though, gives me hope, because you realize that, to be honest, the whole like loving what I do, it's all good. But what's important is my family, it's my kids, it's my wife, it's the connection. And that's the priority. You see, that's where you have to always be living, is on that priority set, not the other bullshit that people tell themselves. I love what I do. Yeah, of course you do, and it's great and it's necessary to do it. But as humans, I always say that if you're doing more than 4 hours a day, you're just not performing at optimal level, because we're not made for that.
mm,
We struggle when I work long hours, and sometimes you're on the flow and you don't even realize you could do 5 6 hours, but shit, that's rare. Anything more than 4, in my experience, performance goes down.
mm.
And if anything, we've seen by lockdowns and everything else that people basically produce the same level of shitty work, whether they're in the office or whether they're at home.
Yeah.
And they probably work about half as hard, or many hours. They work just as hard in terms of performance, but they work half as many hours.
Yeah, and
So
I
that's a
think
reality of people.
a lot of people will find out that they can actually do 2 jobs in the time of one if they don't have to go to the office, which is actually quite interesting. I've got a lot of my guys. I work with a lot of freelancers here that help me in design and in all sorts of things. And
Yeah.
I changed them from permanent full-time contracts guys to just I'll pay you by the hour and feel free to find other jobs as well. These guys are much happier. They make a lot more money because they can do a lot more jobs, and they still have the backup for doing some work for me, and they can find out they can do a lot more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for us, it's great because it's performance based, right? So if they're
Right.
performing, I want to pay them. I want them to make a shitload of money. That's a reality. Even the people that I employ on my training companies, I always tell them that if they're working for me in 3 years' time, they're not doing it right.
Mm.
They should be leaving the company within 3 years to just pursue their own wealth creation.
Right.
That's literally on every interview that I don't do them anymore, but I used to do up to literally 18, 24 months ago.
Mm.
I always told them that. I'm like, you are employed, but I know that we're going to lose you within 3 years, one way or another. If we don't lose you within 3 years, you become an employee, and I don't want you in my company anymore.
Mm.
Because the spirit of the business is entrepreneurship and wealth creation.
Mm.
So I don't want someone there that just wants to be an employee.
Mm.
Not that there is anything wrong with people being employees. It's just I don't want them in the culture of my business.
Mm.
That's really important. Now, for you, what does the future look like for Mr. Erik ten Have?
I think I found my groove on the active work that I want to do, and the active work I want to do is in training and in educational products, and I think I'll do it in different ways. I love being on stage and training people. I love being in front of groups of people online as well to teach them and train them. So my active time is going to be spent on that because I really like the impact it has on others. And I also know that by being good at it, you need to do it a lot. speaking a lot, training a lot of people. There's no way around that part of getting the experience. I don't think you wake up and you become a great speaker. I don't think that works that way. So that's what I'll do actively. Well, my future, the way that I look at it now, my youngest son still has 6 years in high school before he will start studying. My daughter will start studying next year, so most likely she'll move to the Netherlands. So my long-term plan is I now live in Indonesia, but my vision for 6 years is that I sell off most of my assets. I have a couple of big houses here in Indonesia that I can sell. And then I want to live in different places in the world and move around. So I'll be in Europe for a couple of months, maybe on my vision is to have a solar powered boat in the Mediterranean where I'll be staying 3 months. And then maybe Asia or somewhere else, and I'll move around because I've experienced that life a while back when I was traveling with my family for 6 months in 2006. I took my kids out of school and we went rented a camper van in the US and traveled around the US for 3 months, and that lifestyle is just fantastic. And if my active life, my active work is not depending on a location, which it already doesn't, it's not like now, but it will be more and more location independent, then I can do that work from anywhere. So that's one part. The other part is that I still do property development work in Indonesia. I want to stop that because it's still very hands-on. So that part I don't want to continue when I'm in that stage of my life. And I want to grow my passive income strategy in the UK for rental. And then I think the next step for me, and that's where, it's not a coincidence that I'm hooking up with you. The next step for me in all of these things is that I need to move from the execution to the deal maker, to attract money to projects, to find projects like what you're doing, right? And I realized that is really the highest form of time leveraging, because you do the clever work, you find the money, you find the deals, but then you can stay away from executing on any of it. And I just realized that I've had these opportunities already, right? I have people that have money. I have, I can find deals. And that's, again, you also, I think, can only do that if you go through the phases, right? The learning phases of a property investor, entrepreneur. You need to realize that actually that's an even easier way to make money. But I think I'll still be quite active in different, training businesses, online education businesses, and still spend quite a lot of my active working time on that. I'm not sure I will be working 3 or 4 hours a day because in this case, I really like the impact I can make by creating more of this stuff. But I think the weakness that I have is that I say yes to too many things. And I think one of the things that I'll go through also now working with you is try to filter out, the really impactful projects versus the ones that are working but are actually not doing what they need to be doing in terms of either impact or money. And that's the other thing. If you are like me and you like to help people, it's very easy to say yes to too many things. And then you're starting to say yes to the small crumbs, and you forget that I always tell people my job is to throw the big boulders off the mountain. And instead, if I start, throwing small little pebbles down the mountain, I'm very busy, but I'm not very effective. So I need to identify.
I'm gonna put a challenge here for you. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna start a fund together.
Okay.
So we're gonna get that started. So if you are friends with Erik, you know him, you like the way he invests and everything else, we are gonna be putting together a fund. We have quite a few cool investments coming up. That's gonna be managed by both Erik and me, and it is gonna be pretty freaking fantastic when it comes to cash flow, equity, growth, really cool markets, and everything else. So if you're interested, contact Erik, and we'll start giving you details literally within the next fortnight. So we're going to be working on this now, if you're okay for the challenge, and we're going to create the first one.
Cool. I have quite a lot of people, especially here in Indonesia, who have been looking for opportunities outside of this country, because people that are here and are successful here would like to invest their money in other locations for spreading risk or being exposed to other markets. So that would be super nice. I'm looking forward to that. That would be really good.
Awesome. And yeah, we'll discuss it in another chapter, I'm sure. But we will talk, obviously, and set it all up within the next couple of weeks so that we have an actual beautiful product for people to get started and for you to learn how to manage a fund and get it in a way that is amazing for the shareholders, for the people that invest in it, which is why we do it, to be completely hands-off, which is the beautiful thing about these investments, that are completely hands-off for both us, because we have really good machines, and for the people that invest in them. So last question before we stop, because it's been a long one, which is great. I love it. I enjoyed it. What markets do you currently look at when it comes to investing in property? I know you said Indonesia, UK.
Yeah, well, those I'm actively investing in, so I know those markets. Again, I'm not actively looking at other markets at the moment. But what is interesting is that for whatever reason, people are showing up in my universe who have experience in lots of different markets. So I got really close with a good friend of mine, Rolf, who is a property investor in Germany. So I got to know you much better now, and you're in all sorts of different markets, New Zealand, Australia, you're in different areas there. So that's clearly a sign that, the universe is telling me I need to go and have a look at some of these other markets. And that's what I'll be doing over the next, couple of months, peek into areas where my friends are investing and compare notes and see how it's going.
Excellent. Nothing like comparing to make you feel better. We probably, that's always the case. That's why I kind of said it. But maybe that's what we should do. Get started in one of the first episodes and make it about markets, because I think a lot of people want to know what's hot, what's not, what we look at, why, how we look at things. And that's pretty interesting. So that's a whole new topic, which I'm very passionate about, because that's most of the time I actually spend doing that. It's just evaluating. I'm sure that you'll do the same thing. Yeah. So we'll get started with that. But I just want to say thank you for sharing your personal stories, sharing your journey, sharing about what you're going to be doing next, committing yourself to do something different. We have gone through a lot of stuff, and I've enjoyed it a lot. Hopefully you have as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been a long time since I've been sharing some of my personal stories on podcasts. So it's good to be on the other side of the table for a change. Thank you so much for that, David.
Not a problem. Thank you very much. Hope everyone enjoyed as much as I did. I'll see you again soon.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to The Lazy Money Machine. Find out more at lazymoniemachine.com.